fine, not too much sunburn going on. So today is Innes House. Excuse me, it's horrendous at the moment, but never mind. Today we're doing Innes House. Just let me open it up on the other page so I can see the any comments that come up on the other one. Let's mute it down. There we go. So this is an amalgamation of info that I found off of various websites, and I've got some extracts from a couple of very, very old books that I'm going to add on to the end of it. So Innes House is first and foremost a private house and a family home. The story begins with Sir Robert Innes, who commissioned the house, which was built between 1640 and 1653. It's a wonderful Scottish Renaissance property set in 3,000 acres of formal parkland. The Innes estate itself spans over 5,000 acres and is a mixture of agricultural and woodland policies. They sustain an extensive range of flora and fauna and many historic and rare trees. Tenanted farms also contribute to an overall mixed farming pattern across the entire estate. Approximately 30 properties are owned by the estate. They range from small character cottages to large detached houses. It's their policy to actively look after the property with development and change of use, and where possible, to meet the demands of the local economic climate and sustain the estate for the future. So they don't plan on letting it fade away like it had done for a long time before they had it. It was the Innes family estate until 1767, when Sir James Innes sold it to the second Earl of Fife, James Duff. Then the vast parkland was brought to life with the planting of a cornucopia, as they said, of fir, ash, oak, beech and birch trees from all over the world, including the rare Chinese dove tree and the very rare Virginia camellia that still lend their mature refinement to the estate today. Francis and Annie Tennant purchased the house at the beginning of the 19th century. Francis was the youngest son of the First Lord Glenconner, who was one of the progressive Scottish industrialists of the 19th century. Then we've skipped to another bit here. Innes House, a seat of the Earl of Fife, as we've discussed already, in Urquhart Parish, Elginshire. That's how you know you're reading an 1800s book. Elginshire. 6 miles northeast of Elgin. The design for the building is from William Ayton, who was an architect, probably the architect of Heriot's Hospital. And the building was greatly improved in 1825. It consists of 2 4-storey wings and a massive square tower. Hey, Phoenix! Francis Groome's Ordnance Gazetteer of Scotland from 1882 is where that last inscription was from. Another book says that Francis Tennant bought the estate from the Duke of Fife of 1908. One of them says 1904. One of the others says 1912. Early 1900s. We'll just draw a line under that. Hey, Naomi! In 1916, Frank and Annie's youngest son, Mark, was killed at the Battle of the Somme. To honour him, a rose garden was laid outside the east wall, over which the marquee is put up when they have weddings and stuff. After being an RAF mess during World War II and RAF accommodation thereafter, the house was then completely refurbished by Mark, a different Mark and Hermione Tennant in 1997. They created the current magical setting, so they are responsible for the beautiful setting if you're ever there for a wedding. They organise the marquee that goes up every year, stays there most of the year. Mark and Hermione from 1997 are the ones that started that off. Hi, Wendy. Edward and Zoe are the current and 5th generation of the Tennant family to take custody of Innes House. And the task has fallen to them now to preserve and protect its architectural beauty. Now I've got a description of what it's like inside. Now the first bit of the description is more, it's lifted from one of their weddings events page, one of their advertisement pages. So it does sound very much like an estate agent's run round. Step inside, where you'll find spaces for you to spread out and relax, from the cosy living rooms and ambient dining rooms to the ballrooms, plural, ballrooms, perfect for evening dances. There's traditional Scottish style throughout, in keeping with the period heritage, yet with contemporary touches from the warming wood burner and partial underfloor heating to the many en-suites. You'll find a well-equipped kitchen and dining room on the ground floor and the first ballroom for Ceilidh Hour. On the first floor of the west and south wings, you'll find a living room, a compact kitchen, a library, a drawing room, and another ballroom with a dining table that's perfect for a private dinner dance. In these wings, you'll also find a family bathroom, 2 WCs, 2 single bedrooms, and a super king-size bedroom with an ensuite. There's also a king-size bedroom with an ensuite on a mezzanine level of the west wing. On the first floor of the north and east wings, there's a sitting room plus 4 super king-size beds with en-suites and a single bedroom with an ensuite too. There's also a super king with ensuite. They didn't read that through before they did it, and I didn't read it through when I lifted it either. And a twin bedroom with an ensuite on the first floor mezzanine of the east wing. Heading up to the second floor, there's a fully accessible super king-size bedroom with a shower room and adjoining family room. There are 2 other super king-size bedrooms with en-suites. One is a zip and link, i.e. you can separate them if you want to. On the third floor, there are 3 super king-size zip and link bedrooms with en-suites, a super king-size bedroom with another ensuite, a family bathroom, a nursery with 2 single beds. Outside, you've got the enclosed patio area with a barbecue, a large walled garden with a fountain. That's the bit that has the marquee over it. And 15 acres of horse grazing available by arrangement. So you could take your horse too, technically. That's what it reads like anyway. As the house hosts weddings, there's a marquee in the garden during peak season. Guests can enjoy the grounds and its parklands and bonny gardens, abundant with rare and historic trees, beautiful flowers, flights of stone steps, a pretty bridge, and wildlife. Hi Emma, hi Heike. The house consists of a large L-shaped mansion with a square tower in the angle, containing the main staircase. This serves all 4 floors to the mansion. To the north is the courtyard area, flanked by 2 wings. These are attached to the main house by a long corridor. The exterior of the building is decorated with string courses and arched or triangular window pediments. The top of the stair tower is provided with small turrets and a parapet, as well as a cap house, so there's a wee watch house at the top of the stairs. Inside the house has been much modernised, however the vaulted basements of the oldest parts of the building survive, and where the walls have been cut through it is evident that they are of great thickness. I'm good, Heike, don't know about anybody else. Studies of the architecture of the building have shown that it has a very confusing history, hence why this is so disjointed. Timothy Pont's map of 1590 show that at this date the building consisted of a single tower with a small wing, suggesting that the tower was greatly extended to form the L plan it now has. This is supported by the differing levels of floors and that the first floor walls are not directly above the walls below them. A narrow winding stair existed in the thickness of the wall in the northeast corner of the kitchen, which occupies the angle of the L shape. To the south of this is the dining room, and to the east is a corridor leading to 3 smaller rooms. Upstairs, the Great Hall occupies the whole of the eastern side of the building, with 2 rooms above the kitchen and dining room, albeit not identical in size. The Great Hall at some point had the ceiling raised. Ah, cool, Barry. Cool. The Great Hall had the ceiling raised, leading to the reorienting of the 2nd and 3rd floors, and leading to the redundancy of the small winding stairs. There's also a drawing of the building from 1590. There was a detailed analysis of the structure in 1998, and that discovered that its history is more complex, and it highlights the common practice of Scottish landowners sticking to the original site where possible and adapting thriftily the structures already in place. The fabric of the house revealed that the ancient structure of the original building is still inside. It has been cleverly concealed by the architect William Ayton, who gave it a mid-17th century surcoat. So, there's the building that you see now, and the original building is about here, and they've added. So it's got an outside coat on that looks younger than what the building actually is. One book states that there were 2 thriving pigeon houses in 1765 at Innes House. However, there is no local knowledge or discovered proof of these pigeon houses. So, if you find a pigeon house or a ducat in the middle of the woodies around Innes House somewhere, that might be one of the ones that were documented in 1765 but have since been lost. The house is of special interest from its size and architectural style. At one point, the owner was Captain Ian Tennant. He converted it into flats. Doesn't give a date when he converted it into flats. The garden layout was rejigged in 1916, and on the website, it is Bonnie, I am. Hi Phil. I found a letter from the 25th of January 1755 from Charles Cathcart Grant in Elgin to Sir Ludovic Grant, his brother, about Innes House. Frew has been sent for to inspect the walls of the House of Innes. Frew is obviously somebody who works for them. Aye, exactly, Barry. Heaps of pheasants, but nae doves. By the account that he gives of the walls, the knight, i.e. the captain, who would have been moving in, the knight may be lodged there by Martinmas, I haven't looked up when Martinmas is. I apologise. By Martinmas next, for a trifle more than 100 pfennigs, I presume, because it's F. The walls are yet good, and only the west part to be repaired. This is how you know he's writing to his brother. Now, for God's sake, ... push him on, and as the season of the year will admit no delay in cutting the timber for the jesting and the roof, as in the joists and the roof. He, Charles, will supervise the timber for the jesting and the roof, and he will also supervise the felling and the squaring of the timber, and have it at Innis by mid-March. So that's one boy writing to his brother. It's like, here, look, the boys coming to inspect the building to make sure it's okay. We need to start cutting the trees soon because the season's changing and the wood's not going to be so good. So for God's sake, push him on to doing it. I thought it was quite cool, actually. And then I have some extracts from 2 old books. The first of which I was chuffed to bits when I found it. Not because of what it is, but because of where it is. Ah, thank you, Rona. 11th of November, the Feast of St. Martin. That'll be Martinmas. That makes absolute sense. Thank you, Rona. So this book is called The Baronial and Ecclesiastical Antiquities of Scotland, illustrated by R.W. Billings in 1845. But the bit that made me go all, oh, is this book that I was reading online this afternoon is actually housed in the famous Bodleian Library down south. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google the Bodleian Library. If you've seen the TV series A Discovery of Witches, it's the library that she was going to. But the building itself is amazing, never mind some of the antiquities that it actually houses. I would love to spend a week looking around that place. Imagine some of the stuff that's in there. So, I'm going to flick pages, because I'm reading it on the books page. And it is the second page I have open. So remember, this is from 1845. Innis House in Murrayshire. There are characteristics about Innis House which keep it entirely distinct from the other contemporaneous fortified mansions of the north. Let me zoom a bit because the writing's off a wee. It is not so picturesque as many of them are. No one would think of comparing it with Fyvie or Cawdor. Yet, though its meagreness throws it behind these buildings in fullness of effect, it belongs to a more ambitious class of architecture. It will be easy to see that, meagre though it may be, it contains the same character of detail with that which imparts to Heriot's Hospital. Its beauty and oriental-looking richness, and inquiry shows that the identity of the details is not a matter of mere fanciful criticism. There is considerable interest attached in a Masonic view to this building from the various items of its cost having been preserved in a long and very full account book. In this curious document, there is the following rather instructive entry. Item, given to William Ayton, Master Mason at Heriot, his work for drawing the form of the house on paper. £26, 13 shillings and 4pence. This is, of course, Scots money. The amount would be about £2, 4 shilling and 6pence, which a few years before Milton sold his copyright of Paradise Lost might perhaps be considered a very fair price for the design of a country house. Hello, hello. I'm not doing readings on here, but if you message the page, I'll sort one out for remote reading for you, Magda. The design of this evidently was. In the account given in this work of Heriot's Hospital, an opinion is expressed that in the absence of any kind of evidence beyond the vaguest tradition about the edifice having been designed by Inigo Jones, it must be held that Ayton, who at all events is known to have amended the first design, whose portrait hangs in the hall, and was the architect of the hospital. See, it's gone more onto the Heriot's Hospital. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, Ailey. Hi, Moira. It need scarcely be said that the little entry in the Laird of Innis's account of his building expenses tends to confirm this supposition by showing that Ayton was employed as a planning architect. It does not appear that the architect did anything beyond drawing the form of the house on paper, or that any other person could have exercised a general superintendence over the building, for everything that seems to have been needed in its construction, down to the minutest particular, is entered in this interminable account kept by the Laird. So his account book basically covered every single nut, bolt and screw. Okay, Emma. The entries are on the whole rather curious, and as the account is likely to be printed for the Spalding Club, it may serve to throw light on the Scottish masonry of the 17th century, but perhaps a peculiar and local light, as the Laird of Innis evidently concerned himself more deeply with such matters than even the other Scottish country gentry of his day, so he was a bit of a Scrooge. Excepting that already quoted, the most comprehensive entries refer to those who had to put Ayton's plan in execution. Their attendance seems to have been very jealously watched. William Ross, Master Mason, entered to work the 6th of May, 1640, and should have 2 balls victual money and £12. He was absent on Whitsunday, 1640, victual compted at £5, £137 10. And then the next entry is Hugh Milne, entered to work on the, it's actually spelt Sewintent, Suintent, I'm guessing it's like 17th day of May, and has been absent, his whole wages being compted, sen his entry, until he left the work and returned to his own house. Whilk was the penult of November. So basically he's forfeited almost his entire wages from May until near the very end of November, because he never actually turned up. £54 is what he got, whereof paid him in his former compt £27 8 shillings and 8 pennies. This is how you get your 1600s Doric trying to write in English, and I am no kidding you, I could be reading Swahili for all I know. Restus owen of the £52, £24, 11 shillings and 8 pennies, whilk is presently paid. I've got to show you this language. I don't even know if it'll pick it up, but I have to try and show you. Let me flick between the pages where we are. Right, so if I zoom like that, look at this language here. £27 8. That's 8. You know. £52. Emma, no we don't. You can do photos, but you can't do the service. It's only the cathedral for the service now, Emma. Aye, exactly, Heike. The old English, old Doric is got more German and French in it than actual English that we would recognise today. It is very, very much, particularly in this area, there's a lot of German in the Doric because we were trading with Germany. So we kind of absorbed the lingo. So then we go on to the next page. If the account could be taken as fair instance of the arrangements made in the 17th century about building country mansions in Scotland, it would indeed appear that everything was obtained and paid for in detail, down to the purchase of raw materials. No, further, down to the purchase of the tools, because we have entries in this account just like that. I'll send some across, Emma. This is one of the other entries. Item for twa hammers, 2 hammers, and twa krances. I don't know what that is. Oh, it's not a C, it's an E. Twa hammers and twa cranes is what it looks like. Made be the Commissar Smith in Elgin, in 6 quarteris iron. Now, iron is spelt Y-R-O-N. So, that cost him £5. And he got 2 hammers and 2 cranes. I'm not entirely sure what it's actually supposed to be. There are allowances of various kinds made to the quarrier, Alexander Ross, who does not supply the stone at so much per load or square foot, nor does he obtain a certain periodical allowance for his services, but sometimes he gets so much victual or meal. Then there is a sum of money paid for gualicas, hemeris, picas, and wedges. You can make your own mind up for that is. For his use. And then at another time he is credited for evening 200 long stains and 1/100 of short stains at the Cowsea. Cawesea. So basically they're using the Classic Quarry by the sound of it. The account does not appear to have been kept in journal fashion on the principle of immediate entry, and it may be suspected that the worthy laird had extreme difficulty in making out what amount of coin he really had to set down to each item. There occur, for instance, such premonitory entries as this. Item, to remember to put in here the Comte, the Comte Osparis, deals, and all other timber. In other words, remember to put in this book the count of the spars, the deals, whatever that is, I don't know, and all the other timber that was used, with the rails, and for sharpening the mason's irons, and the cost of getting the mason's tools sharpened. In a like manner, he seems to have required to keep a place unfilled up for some things of which he had not received or did not possess the particulars of. Then you get the Comte, or the Count, of the iron made in Crucus, and windows is that came from Leith, extending to 18 stains and 6 poundis. So 18 stains and 6 pounds. And 10 restus of iron, being 1/100th stain and 2 stains. I guess we're talking stones in weight here. fourscore and 3 staines and £10. This 19th of January 1641. This language is abysmal to read. Exactly, Heike, aye. Iron is not the only commodity that he bought from Leith. It is singular enough that the Murrayshire laird should have had to send to the same quarter, between 200 and 300 miles off, for 60 balls of lime. Balls is a weight measurement. The laird occasionally stops and goes back upon the whole preceding expenditure, and its contemplation generally seems in some measure to alarm him. Then you get bits like, "Some o' the money above written is £740. Item, the victual extend it to 60 balls and 10 merks the ball." So 10 merks a ball, and he's got 60 balls. It's £400. Some 11, ALEVIN, hundredth and £40. 40 is FOURTIE. And with the former count made in October 1643 is £7,060, and this by and atur my carts, the expenses of my workhorses, iron crooks and lead, and my smith and his count. Item to the right is 2 balls 1 peck a meal, and for their squaring, the guests and the 7. The guests and 7. Now, I ken I'm nae very strong with the Doric, but that bears no resemblance whatsoever to how folk speak now. It's madness. This is why I always say, when folk are trying to use Ouija boards and stuff, it's like, "Oh, how do you spell your name?" They don't fucking know. They don't speak English. Sorry for swearing. They don't know. They don't speak English the way we speak it now. It's completely different. Trust me, I'm multilingual and I am really struggling to read this. The account begins on the 4th of September 1640 and ends on the 13th of June 1653. The sum total is £15,266 Scots, which amounts to £1,221 3 shillings and 4pence sterling. This is back in the days when Scottish money was worth a different amount to English money. No contemptible sum for a Murrayshire laird to pay for his house in the middle of the 17th century. The owner of this edifice was the representative of the old territorial family of Innis of that ilk, occurring in charters of the 12th century. It ramified into various worshipful North Country families of the name of Innis, and made repeated alliances with other neighbouring houses. The mother of Duncan Forbes, the celebrated Lord President of the Court of Session, was Mary Innis, a daughter of the owner of this mansion. The name is of frequent occurrence in the feuds and other northern historical events of the 16th and 17th century. The head of the family became subsequently merged in the ducal house of Roxburgh. And then we have a picture of the building. And that's the book from 1845. Now I'm going to go to the book from 1862. This book is called The Scottish Nation. Cheers, Emma. It's hilarious. Bits I've missed. Right, okay. That's that up to date. And then we'll go to the book from 1862, which is titled The Scottish Nation. Where are we? Okay. The Scottish Nation, 1862. Innis, a local surname of great antiquity, derived from the British the English. Innis, Y-N-Y-S, or the Gaelic, Inish, I-N-I-S, and having the same signification as its derivative inch, which means island. The name as given to the barony of Innis in the parish of Urquhart in Moray is very appropriate, part of it being an island formed by two branches. Hang on, got a hair sip. Formed by two branches of a stream running through the estate. The word is also sometimes used to denote level ground near a river. One Berowald, that's somebody's name, a supposed Fleming, a person of considerable rank and distinction in the reign of Malcolm IV, 1153 to 1165. Got a charter from that monarch for good services done against the rebellious natives of Moray, of the lands of Innis and Easter Urquhart, wherein he is styled Berowald Flandrensis. This charter is dated, as was the practice in those days, from a remarkable era. Apud Perth in Natale Domini proximo post Concordian Regis et Summer Lady. As there were two reconciliations of the summer leds to the crown, which is basically what that said, but that was in Latin, one in 1154 and the other in 1164, and because William, the Bishop of Moray, who was one of the witnesses, died in 1162, this date must refer to Christmas 1154. Berowald's grandson Walter was the first that assumed the surname of Innis. My page has moved. Yeah, the first to assume the surname of Innis from this land, and thus was the progenitor of all of the Innises in Scotland. So, Scott, who I know watches these, yes, you are related to the Innises, the official, original Innises, before it was sold. The Flemish ones, the ones that came from what is now Belgium. So, he got confirmation of the charter of his estate from Alexander II in 1226, 2 years after the cathedral opened. Walter's grandson William was the first designed in the chartulary. You should try reading this with a shot in. It'd be loads of fun. Was first designed in the chartulary of Moray, Dominus de Innis, and his son, also named William, is mentioned in the borough records of Elgin as Baron de Innis. Where is it gone? Where is it gone? See, when you're trying to read an 1800s book and all the words blur together. Baron de Innis. The grandson of the latter, Alexander. So we've gone Berowald, grandson, grandson, grandson. The latter, Alexander the 7th from Berowald and the 8th of his house, had 3 sons. Sir Walter, who on his death in 1393 succeeded him but died unmarried. Number 2 was Sir Robert, who continued the line of the family. And number 3 was John, who became the Bishop of Moray from 1406 to 1414. It appears from his tombstone that this prelate, this bishop, gave great assistance to the rebuilding of Elgin Cathedral. Because, of course, 1406 to 1414, the Wolf's Fire was 1390, so he would have put a lot of work into the recovery of the cathedral. The second son, called the Good Sir Robert, by his marriage with Dame Janet Abercurdar with a K instead of Aberchardar as we would say now, daughter and heiress of Sir David, Thane of the lands of Aberchardar, was enabled to leave both the estates of Innis and Aberchardar to his son, Sir Walter, who received a charter to the latter estate, the Aberchardar one, dated January 16th, 1426. I really hate that word. See, when you say a word too many times, it starts to just sound like nonsense. From Lord Lindsay of the Byres. That's not a very flattering title. Lord Lindsay of the Cowshed. The then superior. He had also another in 1433 from the Earl of Ross by his first wife, Eupheme Fraser, daughter of the first Lord Lovat. He had with 2 daughters and 3 sons. 1, Sir Robert his heir, 2, Berrowald Rufus, or the Red, designed of Hatton, from whom some of the Innises of Caithness are descended, and 3, John the Bishop of Caithness, who died in 1448. By a second wife, he had a son, John, there's an awful lot of Johns here, of Ardmilly, the ancestor of several families of the name of Innis. The eldest son, Sir Robert Innis, distinguished himself at the Battle of Brechin in 1452. He married a daughter of the Baron from Drumlanrig, by whom he had with 2 daughters 3 sons. 1, James his heir, 2, Walter, ancestor of the Innises of Innermarkie, afterwards of Balvenie, of whom were descended the Innises of Coxton, Orton, Inchbreaky, Auchintool, and 3rd, Robert, the progenitor of the Innises of Draeney. He died before 1464. His son James, called James with the Beard, was armour-bearer to King James III. And from that monarch he had charters of several lands in Moray. According to the family papers, he married Janet Gordon, daughter of the 3rd Earl of Huntly, and with 2 daughters and 2 sons, Alexander and Robert, the latter first designed of Cromie and afterwards of Rath Mackenzie, who carried on the line of the family. By a second wife, he had 4 sons. Talk about go forth and multiply. This lot have been busy. 4 sons from whom are descended several families of the name of Innis. Alexander, the eldest son, the 17th Laird of Innis, possessed a vast estate, having got no less than 6 charters under the Great Seal of lands and baronies in the years 1493, 1507, 1528, and 1533. Aye, probably part goes into the same family, Heike, probably. By a precept from his uncle, George Earl of Huntly, dated 8th of September. See, there we go. Now we're involving the family who have the dude stood on top of Lady Hill. It's not the same George, but it's part of his family. In the first mentioned of these years, but was invested in the whole lands of the forestry of the Boyne. He died before 1541. He had 2 sons, Alexander his heir and William of Forester Seat, who in his old days succeeded his brother, and a daughter, Margaret, married to her cousin James Innis of Cromie. The author of the historical account of the family of Innis, published in Edinburgh in 1820, says, it appears by their many agreements that both these Alexanders, father and son, have been very uneasy to the brother and former Robert of Rath Mackenzie and his family, which may be one reason why God, in his justice, a little after this, extinguishes the race of Alexander and leaves the inheritance to the children of his oppressed brother Robert. So the Alexanders always left the Robert one out in the cold, and both Alexanders died, and Robert's barons ended up inherited all of it. By his his brother Robert. By his wife Elizabeth, daughter of Lord Forbes, Alexander only had a daughter, the wife of William Sinclair, brother of the Earl of Caithness. The latter had sent over his brother to engage the lady for him, but she preferred William to his lordship and bought with her for Tochar the lands of Dunbaith and the parish of Ray. I don't know what the Tochar is, unless that's like the Doric word for dowry, I'm not sure, which had still then belonged to the house of Innes. Alexander had several natural sons to whom he gave landed estates, and from them some families of the name of Innes are descended. His brother, William of Forester Seat, and 19th Laird of Innes, had 2 sons and a daughter. The latter married to Robert Innes, the younger, of Innermarkie. The elder son, Alexander Innes, married Lady Janet Gordon, eldest daughter of the 14th Earl of Sutherland. He is represented as having been a proud and violent disposition, so he was a bit of a lagerlout, which involved him in several lawsuits with kinsmen of his own, one of whom was Innes of Pethnok. In 1576 he met this gentleman at the Cross of Edinburgh, when some high words passed between them, and the Laird of Innes killed him on the spot with a blow from his dagger. Instead of trying to escape, however, he remained, walking up and down at the cross for some time, until the Earl of Morton, who was then regent, sent a guard to apprehend him. He was imprisoned in Edinburgh Castle, and for the crime was soon after tried, condemned, and executed. So don't pick a fight with somebody at the cross in Edinburgh. The family account above quoted states that after condemnation he had made an agreement with the regent for a remission of the sentence, giving him for it the barony of Kilmollymock Lodge in Elgin, of the sentence. Giving him the barony of Kilmollymock, which was worth 24,000 merks yearly rent. But the evening after the agreement was made and the writ was given, being merry with his friends at a collation, and talking anent the dearness, talking adept, I'm going to guess, the dearness of the ransom, talking about the dearness of the ransom the regent had made him pay for his life. He said that had he his foot once loose, he would fain see what Earl of Morton durst come and possess his lands, which being told to the regent that night, he resolved to play sure game with him, and therefore, though what he spoke was in drink, the very next day he put the sentence of death in execution against him by causing his head to be struck off in the castle, and then possessed the estate. So he made a deal saying, look, dinna kill me, I'll give you Kilmollymock Lodge, it's Kilmollymock estate, it's worth a lot of money, please dinna kill me. So they made the deal, and then he went out on the bloater and was boasting how he'd got away with his life, and that estate wasn't actually worth the amount of money he told the regent it was. Somebody went back and told the regent, and the following day had his head cut off in Edinburgh Castle. Watch what you're saying when you're drunk. It has consequences. Having no male issue, he was succeeded by his brother John Innes of Innis. John, of a weak, inactive and facile disposition, he was a little bit simple, having no children, was induced to enter into a mutual bond of entail with Alexander Innes of Cromie, his cousin and nearest heir male, son of James Innes of Cromie, who was killed at the Battle of Pinkie on the 10th of September 1547. By this deed, dated 15th of March 1577, it was agreed that failing heirs male of either, the other should succeed to the whole estates. In other words, if you've not got any sons, it's going to go to the remaining people of your generation in the family. And you get the head of the family title. Even in the lifetime of Laird John, great dissatisfaction was expressed by the other relatives, particularly by Robert Innes of Innermarkie now, not Inver, who was highly incensed at such a settlement of the estates. The family annalist, the family historian, says that Cromie, who was one of the bravest of his race, offered to meet Innermarkie in single combat and to lay the deed of entail on the grass to see if he'd dare take it up. But the latter declined this by, and as he pretended, the persuasions of his friends. He had, however, resolved upon Cromie's death, and he shortly afterwards carried his design into execution. Alexander of Cromie was twice married, and by his second wife, Isabel, daughter of Arthur Forbes of Balfour, brother of the 8th Lord Forbes, had a son Robert, who succeeded him in April 1580. He had gone to Aberdeen for the purpose of seeing his only son Robert, who was then about 16 years old. He had been taken ill at college. With a considerable number of attendants, Innes of Innermarkie and Laird John, whom he had induced by his representations to believe that he had been cheated out of his inheritance by his cousin, Alexander of Cromie, rode to Aberdeen, and about midnight arrived at Alexander's lodgings. By raising the cry of "Help! A Gordon! A Gordon!" as if a sudden fray had taken place in the street, they succeeded in waking him up. Warmly attached to the Gordons, he started from his bed, seized his sword, opened the door that led to the court below, when Innermarkie immediately shot him through the body. Such of his followers as were near then fell upon him and stabbed him with daggers. So they've gone by the boy's house, they've shouted out, "Help, a Gordon," so he thinks that there's a fight, gets up, grabs his sword, opens the door, gets shot through the belly. As soon as he starts to stumble from being shot, the other guy's folk are jumping on top of him and stabbing him several times. Nice way to wake you up in the morning, eh? Who says people up here are peaceful? Laird John was compelled by threats to do the same, and Innermarkie actually forced John Innes, afterwards of Coxton Tower, yes, then a youth at school, to rise from his bed and plunge a dagger up to the hilt into the body of his murdered kinsman. Cruel buggers, aren't they? The assassins next intended to seize the son, Robert Innes, but alarmed by the noise, the young man, sick as he was, had left his bed, and by the help of a friend, escaped by a back door into the garden, whence he was taken to the house of a neighbour. Innermarkie then took off the dead man's signet ring from his finger, and having bribed one of his servants, he dispatched him with it to Innes' house, to show to the widow of his master as from her husband, and to ask, as if by his orders, for the box containing the title deeds of the estate with the deed of entail. The lady accordingly delivered up the box and allowed him to depart. So by sending the ring back, she thinks her husband has said, "Here, look, give this to this man." And it contains the deed of the building. So they've ripped her off. A young kinsman of the family of Alexander Innes, afterwards of Cots, being then at Innes House, felt a strong inclination to return with the messenger to see his sick friend, young Robert Innes, and on his leaving the stable he jumped up behind him on the horse's back. A scuffle ensued between the two of them, when the servant drew his dagger, but the youth wrested it from him and stabbed him with it, so that he fell off the horse dead. So they both tried to ride the same horse, ended up with a fight, and one of them got killed. The youth then returned to Innes House with the box and deeds and told them what had happened. At this very time, another servant arrived from Aberdeen with the news of the murder. Lady Innes secured all the papers and fled for protection to her friends, who immediately conducted her to the king, to whom she made her complaint. The Earl of Huntly, a relation by blood of the family of Innes, on hearing of the murder, that great-great-granda, on hearing of the murder, hastened to Aberdeen for the protection of young Robert Innes, whom he carried to Edinburgh for greater security, placed him under the guardianship of the 3rd Lord Elphinston. In the meantime, Laird John and Innermarkie had proceeded to Innes House, and Laird John was reinvested in the estates. 5 weeks after the slaughter on 17th of May 1580, Innermarkie got from Laird John a new disposition of the estate of Innes in his favour, reserving his own liferent, it says, but I'm going to call it license or something, I'm not sure. 2 years afterwards, they were declared outlaws, and Robert Innes, who had married Lord Elphinston's daughter, went north from Edinburgh with a commission against them both. And all the others who had been an accessory to his father's death, Laird John endeavoured to escape to the south, but was discovered, apprehended, and sent back to Innes House by the friends of Lord Elphinston. Robert did not put him to death, but he made him sign his charter chest, with all the deeds it contained. Innermarkie took refuge for a while in the hills, but afterwards had a retreat of difficult access within the house of Edinglassie. In September 1584, he was surprised there by the young Laird of Innes and a party of adherents, the place of his concealment being first entered by Alexander Innes, the slayer of the faithless servant, who ever after got in consequence the name Craigenperil. Innermarkie was instantly slain, his head cut off and sent to Lady Innes, who made a journey to Edinburgh with it for the purpose of laying it at the feet of the king. And when she laid it to the feet of the king, allegedly, she says, "A thing too masculine to be commended in a woman." So when she gave him the head, they basically thought she was showing too much of a manly side by doing that. But you can't blame her. I mean, the boy slaughtered half her bloody family. The animosity between the families subsisted until November 1587, when, by the interposition of influential friends, all differences were accommodated and the parties reconciled by mutual contract. The son of Innermarkie, having renounced all pretensions to the estate and chiefship of Innesses, Robert the 23rd Innes, by his wife Dame Elizabeth Elphinston, had 3 daughters and 2 sons. Sir Robert, who succeeded him, Sir John of Cromie, who was the father of Sir Robert Innes of Muirton. Are we seeing how all this is connecting in with the other lives we've done, the other buildings and other locations? The eldest son, Sir Robert 24th, was created Baronet of Nova Scotia. To him and his heirs, male whatever is, it doesn't matter if it's not a son, it can be a daughter too. 29th of May 1623, being the 4th on the roll. The family historian states that a cadet of the family Innes of Balvenie, with a view to obtaining precedence of his chief, had applied for a baronetcy, of which Sir Robert Gordon of Gordonston, Robert Gordon's Institute of Technology, Robert Gordon's University, a gentleman of the King's Bedchamber, brother of the Earl of Sutherland, and an intimate friend of Innes, sent him timely notice. He immediately applied for one of a prior date, which was granted, and Balvenie's was deferred until 1628. Sir Robert was sworn a Privy Councillor for life and appointed one of the Committee of Estates by the Parliament in 1641. He seems, however, to have been a royalist, for when he was forced to acknowledge the Parliament in 1649, he was obliged to get his eldest son, Robert, to become surety for his good behaviour in time to come. In other words, he said, if I don't follow your rules, you can take my son. He had 3 sons and 5 daughters. The sons were Sir Robert, 2nd Baronet, James of Lichnet, and Captain William Innes of the Guards. The eldest son, Sir Robert, 2nd Baronet, married Mary, daughter of Lord Ross of Hawkhead, and had 6 daughters, 2 sons, the younger of whom died unmarried. The elder, Sir James, 3rd Baronet, married Dame Margaret Kerr, daughter of Henry, Lord Kerr, only son and apparent heir of Robert of Roxburgh, in consequence of which marriage his great-grandson obtained the titles and estates of the Dukedom of Roxburgh. With 3 daughters, Sir James also had 3 sons. Robert, who died in France before his father. Sir Harry, with 1 R, not 2, 4th Baronet, and Hugh, who died in Flanders. Sir Harry, the 4th Baronet, was elected MP for Elginshire in July 1704 and died on the 12th of November 1721. Survived by his wife Jean, daughter of Duncan Forbes of Culloden, who had numerous family, most of whom died young. One of his sons, Harry, succeeded as 5th Baronet, and another, John of Lochbroom, was an officer in the army. Sir Harry, 5th Baronet, was appointed Inspector of Seizures in Scotland in March 1748 and died in 1762, with 5 daughters and 3 sons. Harry, the eldest, having predeceased him underage, James II became the 6th Baronet. In 1767 he sold the estate of Innes to James the Earl of Fife and went to reside at Innes in Devonshire. So yes, there is another Innes house down in Devon. On the death of John, 4th Duke of Roxburgh, 22nd of October 1805, Sir James Innes, as heir general of the 1st Earl of Roxburgh, assuming the additional name of Kerr, claimed the titles and estates of that great family. and obtained them by a decision of the House of Lords in 1812. I read the court records of that decision by the House of Lords. They dug up 400 years of family history to prove who was and wasn't the heir. It was a long battle. It took 15 months for the House of Lords to actually give their decision on that court case. So yeah, that's how he ended up getting everything. In 1837, the Duke of Roxburgh was created Earl of Innis in the British peerage. The family historian states that in the long course of their succession, they were fortunate in three things. First, that their inheritance never went to a woman. Next, that none of them ever married an ill wife. And third, that no friend ever suffered for their debt. The family of Balvenie, afterwards designed of Orton and Coxton, derive from Robert Innis, 5th Baron of Innermarkie. The son of the murderer of Alexander Innis of Cromie, above mentioned, he acquired the Lord Ochiltree, from Lord Ochiltree the lands of Balvenie in Banffshire, to which he got a charter in 1615. And in consequence, it became for a time the chief designation of the family. He was created by Charles I, a baronet of Nova Scotia, on the 12th of February 1631, the title being to him and all his male heirs. He had three sons, Sir Walter, William of Kennermoney, and James, who became a colonel in the army. The eldest son, Walter, 2nd Baronet, and his son, Sir Robert, 3rd Baronet, suffered many hardships for their loyalty in the reigns of Charles I and II, and the family estate, being greatly encumbered in consequence, was sold by the younger one soon after the Restoration. On the death of the 4th Baronet with no children, the title devolved upon his cousin James, son of Walter Innis of Orton in Speyside, grandson of William Innis of Kinnermoney, second son of the 1st Baronet. Sir James Orton, the 5th Baronet, had 2 daughters and 5 sons, and he died in 1722. His eldest son, Sir Robert of Orton, the 6th Baronet, received a liberal education, but on his father's death was left with scarcely any land or property, and having been brought up to no trade or profession, was compelled to enlist as a private soldier in a regiment of dragoons, dropping his title for that time. While doing duty as a sentry one evening at the quarters of Colonel Winrown, or however I'm supposed to pronounce that, the commander of his regiment, he was accosted by a gentleman who desired to see the colonel. The stranger seemed struck with his appearance, and upon being admitted, he informed Colonel Winrin that the sentry before his door was a baronet of ancient lineage, Sir Robert Innis of Orton, who had disappeared suddenly from society, and it was supposed he had entered the army. The colonel immediately desired another sentinel to take his place, and Sir Robert to be ushered into his presence. Soon after, he procured a cornetcy, I don't know what that is, to be honest, of dragoons, a cornetcy of dragoons for him. So a group of soldiers by the look of it. Sir Robert subsequently married the colonel's daughter and heiress, Marjorie Winram, and had an only surviving daughter, Catherine, who married to James the 16th Lord Forbes. He died in 1758 and was succeeded by his brother Sir Charles, the 6th Baronet, an officer in the army, on whose death in 1763 his next brother, Sir William, became the 8th Baronet. He died in 1817. This branch of the family has not got any good luck, have they? When having only daughters, the title reverted to his kinsman, Sir John Innes of Edengate, or Edengate, in Banffshire. I'm sure you're all shouting at the screen to correct me on my pronunciation for Banffshire, but hey-ho, tough. Lineal descendant of John Innes, great-uncle of Sir Robert Innes, the 1st Baronet. On his death in March 23rd, 1829, his elder son, Sir John, became the 10th Baronet, at whose death on December the 3rd, 1838, the title devolved on his brother, Sir James Milne Innes, 11th Baronet, born February the 24th, 1808, married in 1837, Elizabeth, the daughter of Alexander Thurburn, Esquire of Keith. Their children were John, who was born November the 25th in 1840, 4 other sons, and 3 daughters. A deputy lieutenant of Banffshire. Then we have another branch of the family of Innes of Raymore in Kincardineshire, descended from Walter Innes of Innermarkie, living in 1486, second son of Sir Robert Innes of Innes, 11th of that ilk of that family. His eldest son, Robert Innes of Innermarkie, had 4 sons. John the youngest was the first of the family. A second son and the 7th laird, Alexander Innes of Cowie, Kincardineshire, and of Breda, Aberdeenshire, who died in 1778. He was the father of William Innes, Esquire of Raymore, at one time a merchant in London. Ooh, cha-ching. Married, with children, 2 sons and a daughter. The elder son, Alexander, designed of Cowie, and the younger son, Thomas G. Rose Innes, past advocate in 1853. A family of the name of Innes, formerly designed of Coxton Tower, yes, and descended from Peter Innes of the Keith, younger son of Walter Innes of Innermarkie, above mentioned, hold a baronetcy of Nova Scotia dating from 1631. So you can see the baronetcy for Nova Scotia passing through the family too. And that is also the link back to Coxton Tower as well. Of this family, Sir David Innes of Edinburgh, born in 1781, is the representative. He is the son of George Innes, Esquire, Inspector General of Stamp Duties for Scotland. By the wife, who was the daughter of Sir James Innes of Coxton, they got married and had children. At one time, an officer in the 99th Foot, his son George, born in 1834, married as an officer in 22nd Bombay Native Infantry, and that is where it would tie into Anderson's. Then, how much longer is this? Oh, it's the last bit. It's the last bit, the very last bit. I promise. Thomas Innes, a Catholic priest distinguished for his researches in early Scottish history, was superior of the Scots College at Paris during the first part of the 18th century. In 1729, he published at London a critical essay on the ancient inhabitants of the northern parts of Britain. 2 volumes that contain much valuable information of interest to the historian, the critic, and the antiquary. According to Woodrow, he was also engaged collecting materials for an early history of the Church of Scotland, which was never published. He died in 1744. He succeeded his brother, Louis Innes, as principal of the Scots College of Paris. Louis held that office when James VII and II sought an asylum in France, and was made almoner to the Queen and Secretary of State to the expatriated monarch. To Louis Innes is ascribed the compilation of the Memoirs of James II, an abstract of which was published by Dr. J.S. Clarke at London in 1806. And I know some of you are sitting there going, "Fa's James II. Bonnie Prince Charlie's feather is fa James II is." Innes, John, an anatomist of considerable skill, was a native of the Highlands, and for many years dissector to Dr. Alexander Monro, Professor of Anatomy in the University of Edinburgh. He was the author of A Short Description of the Human Muscles, published in Edinburgh in 1776, and of 8 anatomical tables of the human body, published the same year. He died the 11th of January, 1778. We are finally at an end. Why is this not showing? Oh dear. I can't see myself on the camera in front of me, but I can see myself on here. And who the fuck are you, Samad? Delete your comment. Right, let's have a look at the comments on the Ghost Tours page. Right, hello, 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 hello. PM me for a reading, Magda. I'll sort out your question in a bit, Emma. Yeah, a lot of the Doric is German and a little bits of French as well. Exactly, Heike. That's why it's English easier for you. Hello, Kirsty. Hello. Hubby's fae Abaharda. There's also an Innes in the family, fae Ellen. Ooh, you never know, Heike. You might be related. Yeah, I look worried because my computer screen is completely blank. I am looking at a blank screen. I can see the comments, but everything else is just black. Sadly, the Rose Innes home in Foggy has been closed for long enough now. I think it's been done up now and the flats are either for sale or rent, not quite sure. So, finally, we had some research that took me 20 minutes over time, instead of only covering half the time. Anyway, I will leave you to it. I will see you in a couple of days for an Oracle Cards evening or general chat and banter. Have a giggle, have a laugh. Enjoy whatever you're doing. Be safe. And make sure you're taking care of you and yours. Nighty nighty. Pajama pajama. Bye.